ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special meeting of the Acadiana Press Club. Tonight is a special event for us. It's the first time we've done anything like this, and it is the Lafayette City Parish President Candidates Debate. I'm Ian Ozan, the Vice President of the Acadiana Press Club. Thank you all for joining us this evening. For those of you watching on tape delay on the Acadiana Open channel, thank you for watching us as well this evening. This is an important election for the city and the parish of Lafayette. For the first time in 8 years, we are having a contested race for the city parish presidency, and two well-qualified candidates are running this year. We'll go ahead and we'll introduce them now. First, to my immediate left is Joel Robideau, state legislator, certified public accountant by trade, spent the last 12 years in the Louisiana State House. And to his left is Dee Stanley, former investigative reporter and news director at KLFY TV 10, and former city clerk for the city of Lafayette back in the early 1990s, and of course current chief administrative officer for the city parish government. Our panelists this evening is made up of journalists from across the Acadiana media. Starting to my left, Walter Pierce from The Independent, Lainey Lee Cook from the Acadiana Advocate, Claire Taylor from the Daily Advertiser, and Stephen Albritton with KATC TV3. Our timekeeper this evening is Marie Sintani. Gentlemen, a couple ground rules. We'll start off with some rapid fire questions, and then we'll get into the panel questions. You'll have 2 minutes to answer each question. Marie will hold up signs for 30 seconds, and when you have run out of time. Is that okay? We'll go ahead and start off with opening statements. We did a coin toss before this program began. Joel, you want to toss? You have option to go first.
I think I lost the toss, and Dee chose for me to go first.
I'm glad one of us is paying attention.
Thank you. I am Joel Robideau, CPA, been practicing for 25 years, currently serve in the state legislature as chairman of Ways and Means, sit on the state bond commission, have previously served in other capacities there as chairman of retirement and speaker pro tem. My colleagues elected me as speaker pro tem in 2010. But the main thing point that I want to make in these opening remarks is that during my time at Baton Rouge and during my time as a CPA for the last 25 years, I've learned one thing that's more important than anything else, and it's about relationships. And so, if we're going to have any success as a parish, if Lafayette is going to realize its potential, it's going to be because the administration has the relationships that are needed with the council, has the relationship that's needed with the rest of the municipalities and the other elected leaders, and has the relationship with the folks in Baton Rouge, because ultimately we can only be as good as those relationships are. And so I feel like I've done a good job in Baton Rouge of maintaining, forming, and maintaining those relationships. I love Lafayette. My wife and I raised our 3 boys here. It's an opportunity to come back and give back to the community as city parish president. I look forward to doing that.
Thank you, Joel. Dee?
Let's talk about relationships a little bit, because my relationships are local. They're in Lafayette, and they're in Lafayette Parish. I've worked for 3 mayors, Douglas Strapp, Kenny Bowen, and most recently Joey Durrell, although we call him city parish president. As Ian said, I'm a former clerk of the city council. I know what it means to forge relationships, because you're only as good as the relationships can take you. You need 5 votes now on a city parish council to make those kind of things happen. And I think I am proud of the relationships that we've had. Joe made a comment that if we are to have any success, I think if you look at the last 12 years, I think we've had tremendous success in Lafayette Parish and in city parish government. There is a long way to go. There are some challenges that we face relative to infrastructure and other things, budgeting. We'll certainly get into some of that a little bit later. But I'm all about relationships with the business community. I hosted the Stanley Report for over 10 years, sponsored by one of our local banks. So I know what it means when those banks are maybe not having the type of success that they have had in years past. I know what it means when our economy takes a downturn and an upturn. I know what it means not to kick the can down the road. I know what it means to balance budgets and to make difficult decisions. And I know about the relationship I have with a woman I love more than anyone in the world, and she's sitting right there, Blue Office. I'm not born in Lafayette. I came here in 1981, but I fell in love with Lafayette Parish, and chose to make this my home. Like Joel, raised 3 kids here. Now have 2 grandchildren. Would love to spend a little bit more time with them. But again, I look forward to working with you guys in the next 4 years. if you'll have me, when you get behind that curtain on October 24th, make a decision to vote for the person who has those local relationships, cares about our community, has demonstrated experience and professional experience in actually running this government for the past 12 years. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Dee. We appreciate it. We'll start off our questioning with rapid-fire questions. We have 5 or 6 questions here. We'll ask you in quick succession. After you give your yes or no answers, we'll give you a minute to elaborate on any answers that you feel you need to give more of an answer to. We'll start off with, do you support an end on the downtown bar moratorium? Joel?
No.
No.
Do you support continued funding for Festival International?
You want me to go first
Yes.
every time?
Yes.
Yes.
Festivals Acadiense Creole funding? Joel?
Yes.
Yes.
What about the Acadiana Center for the Arts?
Yes.
Yes.
You're in a college town. Would you support the decriminalization of marijuana in Lafayette in the city limits? Joel?
No.
No.
Should LUS provide service outside city limits?
Yes.
Yes.
LUS Fiber?
Yes.
Yes, with a caveat.
Okay. D, go ahead with the caveat. You have 1 minute to elaborate.
LUS Fiber, unlike LUS Water, Wastewater, and Utilities, is not a monopoly. It is a competitive enterprise. It has to be supported by the ratepayers, and is, from a business standpoint, that return on investment has to make sense. So there's been some interest most recently with with Youngsville and potentially some businesses there, but those decisions will have to be made within the local community in concert with LUS, just like the decision was made by the voters in the city of Lafayette for a city-owned utility to make that decision. So if it makes good business sense, I guess a simple way to put it is it can't be a bourrée type move. We build it on the C-Cum. It has to be built on the Cum-C.
Okay. Joel, you have a minute if you wish.
Yeah, and we had addressed this question in some of the earlier forums. It's got to make sense, you know, financially for LUS to do it. I mean, obviously, we're not going to just expand out there if it doesn't make financial sense. So, you know, as a capitalist, I would make sure that LUS, before they engage in any expansion, that they've done their analyticals and that they've looked at their financials and that it makes business sense for them to do it. I don't think it's an expansion just for the sake of expansion.
Okay. We'll begin with our panel questions. Again, gentlemen, you'll have 2 minutes to answer, followed by a rebuttal, and then a second rebuttal. We'll start with Walter Pierce from The Independent.
Good evening. Good evening, guys. I'm curious about your opinion about TIFs, pilots, and other financial instruments. A lot of people think that the TIF at Louisiana Avenue and I-10 was a successful example of, you know, a funding mechanism like that. Probably as many people think that the Costco pilot might have been a little bit of cronyism. Tell me about your view on these financial instruments.
Joel, go ahead, start this with 2 minutes.
All right. I was just elected to the legislature when we dealt with the TIF for Louisiana Avenue, and that's a very unique TIF in that we were able to secure 1 penny of the state's 4 cents in addition to the local money. And so that TIF was to build the infrastructure for that that exchange. But the drainage, the roads, and to get it all done, both the money from the city plus the money for the state. And so that's, to me, about a perfect example of what a TIF should be used for. I've been asked by the university during my 12 years as a legislator. I've been asked by city parish government during those 12 years to introduce legislation that would allow for the use of TIFs. And when UL wanted one, I was willing to introduce that legislation for them. Ultimately, that piece of legislation, they asked that I pull it as it was making its way through the process. So I understand TIFs. There's times when they are appropriate and there's times when they are not appropriate. But the Louisiana Avenue, using that example, I think was the most appropriate use of a TIF, and why you would want to do it is to get that infrastructure laid down.
Let's talk about the most egregious TIF that I would not support under any circumstances. That is one where dollars go to build private infrastructure that someone else owns other than the people of Lafayette Parish. Although state law says it's okay with a public vote, and although there was a public vote, and it might be nice to have Bass Pro or it might be nice to have Cabela's, I do not support taxing other businesses in this community to build a private building that Bass Pro or Cabela's owns. But state law allows it to happen, and the Louisiana Supreme Court allowed it to happen. I definitely support TIFs when they make sense and the public owns the infrastructure. If the public is owning the road, the public is owning the water and sewer that gets there, and the TIF that Joel referenced, we are maybe weeks away from another announcement that likely will get frontage roads built on the northeast quadrant. So I think certainly there has been some success there. Very quickly, as it relates to a pilot, it stands for payment in lieu of tax. So Costco did not get any money from this deal. There was no cronyism that took place, although it's fun to talk about that. The developer was allowed to redirect to make a payment in lieu of tax, a pilot, to another direction to build a road that the public is going to own. So instead of the government taking the money from property taxes and then spending everybody's tax dollars to be able to build this road, we decided to allow the developer, and it should not be a strange mechanism, it's also allowed in state law. It was the very pilot that was used for the AT&T call center that is permitted in state law, that created 600 jobs and allowed us to get the call center here away from Baton Rouge. So if done properly, if done without cronyism, and done for public infrastructure, it absolutely makes sense.
Joel, you have a minute to respond.
Okay, well, I would just remind everybody that there was a TIF under this administration proposed for a hotel, and which was a private. They don't like my answer. And so that situation has existed before, and I agree, though, that it's a bad idea, and it certainly is not the type of TIF that we should be pushing. As it relates to the pilot, the problem that a lot of citizens have with the current pilot for the Costco is that they were singled out as the company that received that benefit, and all of those other developments out there didn't receive it, and now there's going to be competition for Academy with the Dick's Sporting Goods, and so we don't even know exactly how much increase in sales taxes we're going to get from that development, because it may just be pulling it off from some other private businesses. And so I understand that there's situations where pilots make sense. The Costco one is one that I'm not convinced was the best use of a pilot.
Rebuttal to the rebuttal?
Sure, 30 seconds.
Costco didn't get any money from the pilot, and if you don't like them, pass a state law that prohibits them from having it. AT&T used the pilot to get the call center here. As far as Glenn Stewart's TIF, there was one public discussion about that TIF and where that money was going. There was such an outcry from the community, it took about 30 seconds for that not to happen. So I don't support TIFs to build hotels, although the state law that has been passed allows that to happen. So it might be clever politically to say that I don't support them, do something that stops it from happening if it doesn't make sense for them to happen.
We'll move on now. Stephen Albritton has the next question.
All right. Dee, you mentioned in your opening statement about the successes of the past administration. If you were in those situations, what would you have done differently if you were city parish president during that time?
I don't know. You know, I probably would not have put or proposed a sales tax like we did in 2006, which was overwhelmingly rejected by the voters. Probably wouldn't have put a property tax out in 2006, 2 years in, to fund the construction of a brand new courthouse, which was also voted down by the voters. But you know, out of those failures come opportunities and new ways of funding and financing things, doing things without incurring debt. The good news is, had the people approved those taxes in 2006, we would have built about $600 million in roads. Can anybody say we don't need them today? But had we done it and people voted on it, our tax rate would be 1 penny higher for the next 25 years, as long as there's debt associated with that. I don't think anyone would argue that we need a new courthouse. Not only was this courthouse built before computers, it was built before electric typewriters, and we certainly need a building that is going to be more suitable for the criminal justice system. But had that happened, there would have been a property tax. So that we'd still be living with and paying debt on that building. So the needs don't go away, but in the past, the Airport Commission proved it. There are ways to do things now, so out of those failures comes opportunities. We're not perfect, we're government, but I think that we've done a pretty good job in the past 12 years.
Mr. Robideau, 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, I'm getting the feeling that state law is going to become the Obama did of tonight's debate, but I don't think we should have to pass state laws to limit what local government decides and doesn't decide to do. And so, I mean, we don't need the state mandating all these different laws. If we can decide as local government, hey, this is not a good idea, we don't need to do it. If someone wants to do it, they're certainly welcome to do it. And Lafayette chose not to do it, but that was the public's decision. The question was, what would I have done differently? I mean, the one thing that I feel like has been a difficult process during this 12 years as an elected official is the lack of communication with the current administration. And so when we're in Baton Rouge and Scott wants funding for Apollo Road, they make the trip to Baton Rouge to lobby us for it. They bring the mayor, they bring their elected leaders, and they come and they join us, as does Baton Rouge and New Orleans and Shreveport and most of the elected officials around the state for that short window of time that we're in session. That's mainly been left to us as the legislative delegation. And it's one of those situations where we're working hard, we're doing what we can. I have all the victories that we've realized here as state legislators, but it certainly makes it easier when you've got the entire elected officials group together talking in one voice. And so that's the one thing that I would change about the administration, is that we need to understand the role that Baton Rouge plays. We need to understand that most of the road money that we're going to get comes from Baton Rouge, and we need to make the effort to be part of that process.
So in each of the last 12 years, Mayor Durrell has put the members of the legislative delegation, as many of the Acadiana delegation as we can, in the same room, including Joel. It is staffed and the agenda is set generally by the administration in our departments on what our needs are. So maybe it's just that they're not listening, like they didn't listen when the late, great Ernie Alexander came to this administration and said, we need direction. Joel's right, we have a limited pool of money that we can spend. Ambassador Caffrey or Vero School, choose. And this mayor and this government, after much public debate, choose to build Vero School. Nothing against Ambassador South, had to happen. Also had to get built, but it didn't happen. So saying that we don't communicate, saying that we don't come to Baton Rouge, even sometimes when we do, people don't listen.
Do I get to rebut?
30 seconds.
I can count on one hand the number of times that we've been invited to the administration's office. Oftentimes it's about legislation that we end up deciding not to pursue for various reasons. But we can always do better. Well, we can always communicate better with each other, and we should. And that's the one thing we were asked, what would we do different? And so that's all I'm saying, is that we can do a better job there. We should do a better job there.
Next question comes from Claire Taylor from the Daily Advertiser.
Hold it there.
All right, got it. This is to Joel first. Did you sign the One Acadiana Pledge to support and advance their goals for Lafayette? Why or why not? And what's your opinion of elected officials or candidates agreeing to advance the goals of a private organization that's not elected by voters?
Before you answer the question, Joel, for those who may not have heard it on TV, did you sign the One Acadiana Pledge to support and advance its goals for Lafayette? Why would you, someone who might be soon one of the parish's top elected officials, agree to advance the goals of a private organization that's not elected by voters? Again, Joel, you have 2 minutes for this one.
All right. I did not sign the pledge. I'm not the type of person that signs pledges. I'm an elected official. You can decide at the voting booth whether you like what I did or you don't like what I did. When Blueprint came out, even though I agreed with the majority of their agenda, even handled some of the legislation for them, and certainly supported a lot of the pieces of legislation, I didn't sign the pledge. As most of you know, we recently had a situation at the Capitol where, because the governor signed Grover Norquist's pledge, it handcuffed the governor into creating this incredibly, trying to think of the right word, stupid piece of legislation that didn't really do anything other than allow him to say he didn't violate the pledge. And so I didn't sign the pledge. I read through, I sent them a letter explaining
We have
that
to
there's a
resolve
lot
this
of
money.
issues where, that they brought up that I think are good and that need to be discussed and that I'm in agreement with, but I didn't sign the pledge.
D, 2 minutes.
I don't make decisions on what I'm going to do based on how something is framed and then say, I'm never going to do it ever. Let's go over the pledge. The pledge asked if we would be willing to accelerate implementation of Plan Lafayette and focus on the revitalization of the urban core and our gateway corridors. And it says support, neutral, or oppose. I support the revitalization of our urban cores and our key gateway corridors. The second component of the pledge is execute a prioritized infrastructure program to reduce traffic congestion and better preserve roads and bridges. Execute a prioritized infrastructure program to reduce traffic congestion. Is there a single person in this room that's opposed to that? If you brought it to me, if the media panel brought it to me, I would sign it. It doesn't matter to me that it came from one Acadiana, it's what's in the document. Fix the city charter to provide a more equitable representation for both the city and the parish. The consolidation discussion may come later. I do not support deconsolidation. The people have spoken on it twice, but there are mechanisms in place and there is an ability to amend this charter to be able to give the city of Lafayette its autonomy. Others who do not live in the city of Lafayette vote for the city of Lafayette's mayor, but residents of the city of Lafayette do not get to support the mayors of the other towns. So I do support the discussion, and that's what this is. Will you have the discussion in pursuit of potentially appointing a charter commission? Perhaps not. And then there's a support, neutral, or oppose, and that's it. So it would have been easy for me to say, I'm not going to succumb to political influence of a private group but I looked at what the pledge said. And I support the things that are in the pledge. If there would have been one or two of those things, or if I disagreed with two or three, I would not have signed the pledge, but I did.
Joel, 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, and I mean, Dee didn't read the entire sheet of paper in front of him because there are things in there that I have some reservations about, even though I do agree with a lot of what's in it, and that those ideas are important and that we should pursue. But I'm not going to allow a private entity to tell me, hey, you signed this pledge 3 years from now, and this is what we meant when we wrote that. That's just not how I believe the elected officials should make their decisions, and so I didn't sign the pledge. But that's just my personal belief. I don't think pledges, worth the paper they're written on.
D, 30 seconds.
I surely read what's in front of me, unlike what goes through a lot of times behind closed doors in Baton Rouge where things obviously don't get read. I remember the news articles on legislators saying in the waning seconds of the session that they didn't even have a chance to read what they voted on. And now you're going to tell me I didn't read this, which was put in front of me a month before. I read it and I signed it because I agree with it. That's why.
Next question comes from Lainey Lee Cook from the Acadiana Advocate.
City parish budget projections for the coming year paint a dim picture for the future of road and drainage work in the unincorporated areas of the parish. There's little to no money available for new projects, even if all administrative costs were backed out and every cent was spent in labor and materials. How do you plan to address this issue? D.
Yeah, parish government has had this problem since before consolidation. The general fund for parish government is about $14 million now. The library has a robust $40 million plan, and they presented that to the people, got the people to support it. And what you're seeing with the libraries now is a result of that initiative. I think the climate has changed. I don't think you can get a property tax, an 8 or 10 mil property tax passed, and that's traditionally how parish government has funded its needs with those millages. And because of how the parish unincorporated area is shrinking, because of the growth of the smaller towns, a sales tax just isn't big enough to be able to do those things. You have the multiplier and the denominator, and you look at the denominator and it's just not big enough. It's a 1 cent sales tax that's going to generate about $6 million. It is going to have to be a feasibility study. It's going to have to be a tax that goes away, and it is going to have to take a concerted effort, including the smaller towns, the unincorporated area, and yes, the city of Lafayette, to put it out there. I think that's the only way it gets done, is that if you get it out there, and then you have to build what you say that you're going to build. But it either has to come from taxes or TIFs or tolls or those things, and it's a difficult formula in the unincorporated area. But I think the way that it works is to build the roads that are the most critical, the ones that move the most traffic, fix the drainage that is the most critical, moves the most water, and then that tax goes away.
Joel, 2 minutes.
So the reality for the outlying areas is exactly the picture that Dee painted, is it's going to be difficult financially. And during the 12 years that I served in the legislature, I don't have it memorized, so if I glance at my paper, it's because I don't have it memorized. A lot of the money for those parish roads, certainly out in the rural areas, comes from the state of Louisiana. Not factoring in the 90-something million for I-49 and Evangeline Thruway and the 40-something for Ambassador Caffrey, not counting the 44 for Verrott School Road, all those are state roads and state money, but Golden Grain Road, University Avenue North, East Broussard, Apollo Road, LA 93, Cameron Street between Dussault and Scott, Youngsville Parkway, South Fieldspan, Riceland, Richland, 92, 1252. All of those roads receive significant millions of dollars from the state of Louisiana. Now, I know the state does everything wrong, but ultimately, if you're going to get funding for these outlying areas, guess what? You need to go to the state. And guess who you need going to the state? Somebody that has a relationship and doesn't think that everything that the state does is bad. This is over $200 million of state money that has been spent in Lafayette Parish just since I've been elected. Now, I wish I could stand up here and say, I got it all. It was because of me, but it was Senator Michaud before me. It was me and the rest of the legislative delegation since then. But that's the reality. That's where the money's going to come from, because it's our tax dollars that go to Baton Rouge. So we need someone that's willing to go there and bring some of it back. And it takes a relationship, because everybody's over there asking for some of their money back. And so that's how you end up funding it. There's no other easy way. You can go with the tax, but good luck with that.
Dee, 1 minute.
Well, we can ask the state all we want to, but based on what I've been seeing in the state finances, it's going to be a fun session coming up. A budget balanced on $62 a barrel of oil, 100% increases in the last 7 years for UL students. And, again, maybe we'll get lucky and maybe we'll get that money, and the hundreds of millions of dollars of manna from heaven will continue to pour in. But I'm reading different newspapers, apparently, and getting different information on what money is available. So my plan is to do what we can locally to take care of our own. What we get from the state, awesome. I mean, that'll be fantastic, but I don't think we can bank on that. I think we have to have a local plan.
Joel, 30 seconds.
Yeah, and just, to make sure everyone's clear, there's two budgets. There's the operating budget, which is the one that Dee's referring to, and there's the capital outlay budget, which typically each year has about $200 million to $300 million that we paid down debt service on, and so that's available to be spread out across the state. We were very fortunate that Michaud was a chairman that was able to bring some of those capital outlay dollars home. That capital outlay bill actually originates in Ways and Means, which I was a chairman, so we were fortunate that I was able to bring it home. We're both gone. We need somebody that has the relationships to continue that.
That concludes our first round of questions. We'll begin round two with another set of rapid-fire questions. Again, we'll do one-word answers to these questions. This time for each one, D, you'll have the first option to answer. First question, should the horse farm, which is owned by the city, be named by a private donor?
Say that again.
Should the horse farm, which is owned by the city, be named for a private donor?
Yes, because, at least in this case, because it's consistent with the contract that he's paying $6 million for those rights.
Joel?
Sure.
Should the Lafayette Police Department be allowed to investigate its own officer-involved shootings? D.
No.
No.
HUD said more than a year ago it was ready to return control of the Lafayette Housing Authority to a locally appointed board, but Mayor Durrell refused to appoint the local board. Will you?
No. Not without changes in the legislation, not without safeguards.
Joel?
Yes.
Do you support the temporary tax model we have in place to fund expansions at the airport? D.
Yes.
Joel?
Yeah, I guess.
Do you support the same temporary tax model for the South City Parkway Bridge?
Absolutely.
It depends.
For schools, for school facilities?
The same tax model for school facilities?
Correct.
Yes. The tax that goes away model, yes.
Joel?
Yes.
And the same tax model for parks and recreation funding?
Yes for capital.
Joel?
Probably not.
Okay, you have 1 minute to elaborate on your answer, starting with D.
Well, just, again, I think that the tax climate now, and it's going to be one that property taxes are just not going to get passed. I don't see it happening. Sales taxes that go away, I think, will get passed, but you're going to have to build and demonstrate to the community that you're going to build what you promised them that you're going to build. People have lost faith in government nationally and at the state level. I don't believe that's the case here. I think locally we have a fiscal posture in this government, although we're facing some difficult times to come, to be sure, unless something happens with oil and gas where people can touch us and feel us and come to forums like this and hold us accountable and ask the tough questions. And I think as long as we're true to that promise and we build what we say we're going to build and try to keep balance in play as it relates to taxes, I think we're going to continue to grow and prosper.
Joel, 1 minute.
Yeah, I think when the road tax originally failed, then the administration's response was, well, I guess people don't want roads. And I just thought that was a pretty cavalier comment to make. It wasn't that they didn't want roads, it's that they didn't have trust in the government, that they were prioritizing the budget to fund roads at the level that it should be funded. And so the model that was used for the airport tax, I think was a reasonable model to approach the voters with. It made sense because it was going to be something that goes away. And the voters bought in, and they gave that tax a chance. If we come right on the heels of that tax and say, okay, now we're going to roll it into this, and then we're going to roll it into that, well, then it's a tax that never goes away. And I think at some point you run the risk of the community saying, wait a second, this was one penny for one project or one period of time, and as soon as it ended, you came at me with something else. And so I think it's important that that we really think long and hard about when we come back to the taxpayers.
We begin round 2 of questioning with Lane Lee Cook from the Acadiana Advocate.
The conversation on economic development seems to be focused on the south side and Lafayette Parish north of I-10, but the city's historic urban core, the north side, has gone neglected for more than 2 decades. If elected, what will you do to encourage businesses and residents to settle on the north side and restore that section of the city to prominence?
D, 2 minutes.
Well, I embrace the One Acadiana Pledge. It relates to revitalization of the urban core. I've engaged in meetings with Downtown Lafayette Unlimited and DDA. I believe that we absolutely have to take care of our gateways. 3 of those, again, are state gateways. The one local gateway is Louisiana Avenue, and we built the extension of Louisiana Avenue. We're looking at the extension of North St. Antoine. I think we need to continue to focus on the urban core and cleaning up the urban core. It has some of the oldest and best streets. They're concrete. It has some of the old and best drainage. It has the infrastructure already there. And what it needs is, we go through the same type of metamorphosis that other communities go through with their inner city. Fortunately now, with the companies like Proficient and Encaro and CGI coming to town, we have a group of young people who want to live in the urban core and return to the urban core, and that helps us get beyond that chicken and egg problem that we have. The urban core needs to have a grocery store and a movie theater and those things that are going to attract people that want to live there, but you also have to have the people before those businesses are willing to make the investment. I supported the comprehensive plan as it relates to the urban core and having the discussion between the public sector and the private sector, because what we've seen historically in this community, going back to 1983, 84, when the first investments were made in downtown Lafayette, is that private investment almost invariably follows public investment. So if you take care of your business, if you clean it up, if you make it a pretty penny, you make that investment and use the money that you have available, then I think the private investment will follow. I support the revitalization of the urban core. I've had conversations with Jason L. Kuby, Greg Gautreaux, Nathan Norris. It is critical to our future.
Joel, 2 minutes.
Thanks. And if I misunderstood the question, then I apologize, and I'll certainly answer it a little bit later on. But I understood it to be more about the north part of the city and what we can do to revitalize that area. And if we're going to honestly address the challenges that we face, then we need to acknowledge this, what the Ole Miss reporter wrote about when they came down here to play UL in baseball. And he said, to paraphrase, I don't know what's so great about Lafayette. I stayed at a hotel, and when I drove to campus, all I saw was blighted property, shuttered businesses, and I didn't see anything like what I was told Lafayette was. Because the truth is, if you go stay at the Ramada Inn, formerly the Holodome, and you drive through that area, that's what you're going to see. And as a community, we need to embrace the areas of our community that need our help the most. And so one of the initiatives of One Acadiana on the pledge that I did not sign is about those gateway corridors and how important they are. Because as those gateway corridors are developed and you bring business to those areas, then you're going to have jobs. And when you have jobs, you're going to have people. And when you have people, they're going to want to live in the area. And it's the simplest model of economic development that there is. And so I feel like #1 priority above all else is to focus on those gateway corridors that's fixed the part of Lafayette that has been neglected the most for the longest period of time. And if we do that, then it doesn't matter where you're coming in, from Houston, from the East Coast. When you pull into Lafayette, you're going to see a community and say, man, I'd like to move here one day. This place is great. And that's what I think you were asking, and that's certainly my position on what we should do.
D, 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm glad you're focusing on it now, because for the 12 years you've been in the legislature, you didn't focus on it at all. Those are 3 state corridors. The state of Louisiana won't even cut its grass. We've spent over $3 million in the past 12 years just trying to cut the grass so it looks a little bit better than it looks. I don't think anybody is happy with what Caffrey looks like at its exit, although work is being done on it now. North University Avenue, again, that's a state corridor. And the same thing with I-49, which is the intersection of 2 federal highways. And Larry Sides and Kathy Ashworth got it 30 years ago when they tried to launch Gateway Lafayette and take that out of the hands of the state. It has improved somewhat. That's how LCBC got moved out to that area to try to bring some attention to it. But again, the one corridor that you look at that is the best corridor, if there is one, is the local corridor. It's the one where we've taken control. So I agree that we need to focus on it, and I agree whether it's north, south, east, or west, protecting the urban core and those gateways is significant.
Joel, 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, certainly Scott and Breaux Bridge haven't blamed the state for their entrances off of Interstate 10. I think we can all admit if you're driving from Houston, you'll pull off there because of what they've done. And the state may still own those corridors, but they've taken the initiative to make it something that they can be proud of. And so I think the city of Lafayette, the parish of Lafayette can do the same thing.
Now we can agree.
Next question, Claire Taylor. Or excuse me, Stephen Albritton, I'm sorry.
Joel, while you were chair of the Ways and Means Committee, the state legislature's handling of the budget was, some say, inept. How can the public be assured a similar situation won't happen with the city parish budget if you were elected?
Yeah, well, and again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, Stephen. There's 2 budgets. The operating budget, which is the budget that has caused us so much angst because it's based on the price of oil and the sales tax collections and income tax collections, corporate franchise, severance, all of those taxes that go in to fund the day-to-day operations of the state. When you hear about the budget, that's the appropriations budget. The budget that I was in charge of was the capital outlay budget, which is the budget for infrastructure, roads, bridges, drainage, and I would say that during my 10 years Ways and Means Chairman, Lafayette Parish did very well as it related to getting their tax dollars back when I rattled off the road projects that we were able to bring home from Baton Rouge. Lafayette's a donor parish, it'll never get back all of its tax dollars, and that's just because there's some parishes that exist out there that don't have any tax base. They don't have a Walmart, they don't have anything, and so they're not sending really any tax dollars of any significance to Baton Rouge, and so the donor parishes like us are never going to get 100% of our money back. But as chairman of that committee and working with the rest of our legislative delegation, we were able to do a whole lot as it related to capital outlay in our parish, and I'm proud of those successes. We did that in spite of Governor Jindal being mad about certain things that we may have done, and I'm happy to wave around the accomplishments from the Ways and Means Chairman. We never had an issue with capital outlay while I was chairman.
I've been around budgets for 34 years in Lafayette City and parish government. I've been through tens of thousands of hours of budget hearings and budget discussion. Our bond ratings are solid. Our reserve fund is in great shape. We certainly hope that oil and gas will come out of whatever it's going to see. I think if you look at where we are and how we manage our fiscal affairs and how we have done that, it is a sterling operation, has been for the last 12 years. So as far as what will happen as it relates to the budget, that's the experience that I have, and that's what I bring to the table.
Joel, 1 minute.
Yeah, and so I'll focus on the part of the question that had to do with my chairmanship of Ways and Means. But yeah, I mean, I'm a CPA by trade, I serve on the State Bond Commission, I understand finances. I don't think the budget's going to be an issue for me to grasp. I think Joey came in with a completely different background, and he was somehow able to grasp the budget and manage the process. So I feel very confident in my abilities as a CPA to handle the budget.
D, 30 seconds.
I'm very confident in Joe's abilities as a CPA, certainly. I mean, he's professionally trained. But the person that helped Joey Durrell manage that process, one of the team, is sitting right here. There is no learning curve as it relates to the budget. Before that, again, I worked for 2 mayors. I was the director of the city council office under one of the most successful mayors the city of Lafayette has ever had, Douglas Strapp. So what I bring to the table, professionalism notwithstanding, is actual experience in getting budgets passed that move our community forward.
Now we move on to Claire Taylor from the Advertiser.
Right, okay. Y'all can hear me this time.
Yes.
Okay, this is for Joel first. Both of you said in a forum last week that residents should not be penalized for living outside the city of Lafayette. But we've seen developers build hundreds of new homes outside the city with subpar roads and other subpar infrastructure. Then the subdivision is almost immediately annexed into the city, and those inadequacies become the burden of city taxpayers. What do you propose to ease the burden on city taxpayers?
Yeah, I think the way the question was put to us was, should we put an impact fee? Should we charge folks that want to live outside of the core city of Lafayette this extra amount of money? And my answer then, and my answer today, and my answer tomorrow is going to be, people choose to live where they choose to live for a whole lot of reasons. It may be because they want to be near the retail center of Ambassador Caffrey and College Saloon. It may be because of a certain school district that they want to live in. It could be because they want to be located near one of the new sports complexes. It could be a whole variety of reasons. And right now, if it's not financially workable because there's roads out to very sparse areas, then the solution is to develop those areas and get more property tax paid in those areas because the roads are already there. And so I don't think we should penalize folks just based on where they want to live. Ultimately, as the development occurs, I mean, Lafayette's geographically the smallest parish in the state. And so there was a time when you would have said, I can't believe anybody's building out near Judy's Inn. It's a gravel road. Why are they living that far out of town? And sometime, probably not in our lifetime, this whole parish is going to be developed. And all of those individuals are going to be property taxpayers. And I just don't see the real benefit or need to start punishing people that want to live further out and away from the city of Lafayette.
I want to make one point, and then I have a question about your question. First of all, if you're going to tell someone who owns property that you can't develop, you're done, you're not getting a building permit, and you don't have a reason, you're condemning that person's property. You better have a reason to tell them that you're not going to let them do what many of us have been able to do, which is enjoy the quiet enjoyment of our property and to develop based on the rules that exist. So that's why I don't support punishing people and saying, no, you can't do it. Did your question also envision that once, at least for the ones, the hypothetical you mentioned, that the subdivisions were annexed by the city of Lafayette? And well, that doesn't happen by accident. So when the discussion is had, when those building permits are at play, and those meetings are held with the developers, and I've been at those meetings, there's a determination made at that time who's going to provide the services to them. There's a meeting with the utility department to determine whether or not it's LUS, or whether they're in the area of influence for SLEMCO, and SLEMCO is going to provide that. There's also a discussion of drainage, and potentially there is a master drainage plan, also potentially a traffic study that takes place. So if we envision that it's going to come into the city of Lafayette, Claire, there are decisions that are made on the front end to be able to do that, to try to lessen that impact, to get the services provided based on what's already out there. But again, the alternative is to look someone in the eye and tell them, you can't develop this property. If we can't get utilities to you, if we can't get a road to you, if we can't get sewer to you, that's a completely different issue. But your question envisions that those subdivisions were at least contiguous to the current city of Lafayette and not way, way far out to where city services could be provided.
Joel, 1 minute.
Yeah, and regarding the annex, I think the city will always, I mean, it's just the financial analysis of whether or not it makes sense to annex it or not annex it. If there's going to be enough to pay for the services that you feel like you need to provide, then you're going to have those conversations and annex it. And if it's not, then those conversations are going to be had also. And then the developer has to decide, well, if I can't get annexed, am I going to be able to sell this property? Am I going to be able to develop it? Does it make sense for me to do it? So, reiterating what Dee said, a lot of that stuff is determined on the front end. But ultimately, if the city determines that it makes financial sense, and then the developer proceeds with it based on that, then I don't begrudge anybody for wanting to live out in the country. It's a nice place to live.
D, 30 seconds.
That's one of the things we agreed on, including punishing. There's a lot that we agreed on, but that's one of the things. Punishing people is not one of the things that we would disagree on.
Next question from Wally Pierce, The Independent.
Talking about consolidated government, I'd like you to respond to the proposition that consolidated government as it is now isn't working properly or perfectly. As you both know, I think it was 2011, the council impaneled a charter commission which met for several months, and their solution to put before voters was deconsolidation, which was overwhelmingly rejected. But a lot of people within the city of Lafayette worry that the city of Lafayette isn't in great enough control of its own affairs. What can be done to make consolidation operate most effectively, especially for the city of Lafayette?
D, 2 minutes.
It's the issue with the structure of the government, and the reason that it's flawed is it did not fix the funding structure that existed back in the early 1990s. The parish had fiscal issues and was fiscally challenged, I mean the unincorporated area, before consolidated government. Consolidation didn't fix that at all. In fact, it made it worse, because all the unincorporated area the parish can do now is either stay the same size or shrink. If I gave you that business model at the Independent, you might as well close up the doors. It's either dead or it's on the way to dying. And that's the model that we served up for the parish. So absent that funding structure, you have to work within the government and the framework of the government the way it exists now. One of the benefits of consolidation was one recreation department, although not a millage that is sufficient enough to support parish-wide recreation. Another one would be one public works department, having one public works director, one council, one manager. So those economies of scale, I think, make all of the sense in the world. The things that consolidation, that that are related to consolidation that people have a hard time getting their arms around is this notion that other people in other communities get to vote for your mayor or get to vote for your council members, but they don't actually buy in or pay into the government. And certainly they pay into sales taxes when they come and shop in our community, but that can be said for people in Crowley who come here and do that as well. So I think what you need to do is work within the framework of the charter itself. It is fixable. It is allowed to be amendable. People will have to vote on whatever it is that we decide to do. And there are several different models, whether it's a weighted vote potentially, or whether there is a reapportionment possibility to work like the Lafayette Public Utilities Authority, where the majority of the 5 council districts were to vote on city issues and the 9 council members vote overall. It is beyond, in addition to the pay grade of the city parish president, it's going to take the council, the business community, and also the elected leadership in the smaller towns.
Joel, 2 minutes.
Yeah, and this I think is another area that Dee and I agree on, although I will say that ultimately it's going to take the council in collaboration with the parish president, in collaboration with all those elected officials. And that has been one of the issues of this administration, is that the relationship with the council and the relationship with the elected leaders in some of the other municipalities has not allowed for that discussion to really even occur. It was rejected, we can all agree. It needs to be tweaked, we can all agree. So how do we make that happen? How do we get that done? We're going to have to get the councilmen to vote that way. We're going to have to get the other elected leaders to come on board. So I feel bad that my mic is doing, but
I feel pretty good about it.
I bet you did. And so again, I'm going to go back to the earlier statement. The rest of the parish, these other municipalities, you know, they have their sales tax and they get to spend it in their cities, and we collect our city sales tax, and we have to be big brother and spend it in the city, but we also have to supplement the parish budget. And all they ask when they contact me is they say, Joel, we just want some acknowledgement from the parish president that you don't go shop at New News very often, but our community comes to you for when they need a book, one of the bookstores, when they want something from Academy, when they want something from Target. We come and we shop in the city of Lafayette, so some of your sales tax dollars are parish generated. And so is it that unreasonable to expect that maybe some of that money could help with some of these parish issues? And that's really all they're asking for. Ultimately, it's going to be the relationship for who you elect with the council and with those municipalities that's going to determine whether or not you can make the tweaks. And I went over time because you got extra.
I won't take that. And I wish Mayor Glenn Brasser could be in the room. I wish Mayor Purvis Morrison could be in the room. I wish Mayor Johnny Thibodeau could be in the room. I wish Mayor Ken Ritter could be in the room. And yes, I wish Mayor Charles Longley could be in the room. Because I think what Joel is referring to is the issue as it relates to Broussard. And the city of Lafayette and the Lafayette utility system were a defendant in those lawsuits. We were sued. You were sued. The city of Youngsville was a defendant in a lawsuit filed by that mayor. Although that mayor has said publicly he does not support me and he supports Joe and sent out a mail out saying that he supports Joe, I'm okay with Charles, Mayor Charles. I want to call him the day after the election and tell him everything that happened in the past, the mail out, the lawsuits, everything else, is simply that in the past. I think if any of you reporters talk to the other mayors about the relationship that this administration has with their communities, I think they will be able to name projects for you, and I think they'll be able to tell you that we're just fine.
Joel?
Yeah, I would encourage you to contact them too, because they've contacted me, and it's not quite as hunky-dory as Dee's making it sound. Certainly, it's maybe not to the level of Broussard, but no, there is definitely tension between the cities that exist in the parish that feel like this position has become the mayor of Lafayette and is no longer the parish president. And so I encourage the media to contact them also, because they're certainly blowing up my phones.
The last question this evening will not come from the panel, it will not come from me. It will come from you two. This is the part of the debate where each of you gets to ask your opponent a question that we did not ask tonight. So we'll go ahead, we'll start with Dee posing the question to Joel. What question would you ask Joel that we didn't ask tonight?
And look, Joel's a good man, and he was faced with some difficult decisions this past session. And any of those guys who are in public service in Baton Rouge, it's a tough time. You made the comment that UL has been saved and that higher education has been saved. What we're seeing from the four gubernatorial candidates, the one thing they seem to agree on is that the budget is a catastrophe, and they are going to need a special session, perhaps in emergency fashion, to be able to fix it. As we look at students with student loan debt and the things that have amassed for them, almost 100% increase in tuition in the past 7 years. I guess my question is, if that were the case, why did higher ed have to be saved from anything? Weren't they just allowed to keep the money?
Joel, you'll have 2 minutes and no rebuttals on these.
Okay. Well, certainly I would say that higher ed was saved. Now, they may not have been saved for the rest of their lives, but they were facing a $211 million cut in the Governor General budget that he presented to the legislature. So we had to figure out how to resolve that issue. And it was an election year, and it wasn't easy to do. And ultimately, we made some very difficult decisions, but we did it to save higher ed. And yes, the budget had oil at $80. We dropped it down to 60. It looks like it needs to be dropped down to 40 whenever the next governor comes in. And guess what? They're going to be faced with the same issues we were faced with, and someone's going to have to step up to the plate and save higher ed again. But that's an annual debate. That's an annual budget forecast that the legislature has to deal with. And so if we hadn't done what we did, the universities would have taken a $200 and some odd million cut. It would have been devastating. You can ask the chancellors, the presidents of all the universities. You can go back and read the media reports about the programs that would have had to have been cut, the layoffs that would have had to occur, and none of that happened. Now, does that mean it's never going to happen, and that now that the oil's down at $40, that situation isn't rearing its head again? No. But for that session, we did what we had to do to save higher ed.
Okay. Joel, you can pose a question to Dee. Again, Dee, you'll have 2 minutes to answer, no rebuttal.
The only thing I would ask is that, Claire brought up the pay raise issue, and I had made the comment after the article was published. I think there was an interview with you and President Durrell about it, and no mention was made other than to say the charter allows for it. And so, I said, well, I'm not going to take it. And after I said that, you said, well, then I'm not going to take it either. But I guess the question then becomes, well, why was it put in the budget in the first place? Because there was no pay raise for the fire chief, public safety, the chief of police, none of the administrative staff of Joey's office or your office. The only raise that was in there was for that one position. And so my question is how does that get in there? Who puts it in? And why was it put in?
Well, first of all, it's not correct. You obviously don't read the budget. The budget for the Public Works Director is in at $145,000 roughly. Kevin Blanchard makes $125,000. It doesn't mean that he's going to make $145,000 even though it's not budgeted. The 10% which the charter allows is also in for all council members. And all of these reporters who have covered these council meetings over and over know that the council members, some of them take 10%, some of them take 2%, some of them take nothing. The reason that my comment was made after yours is because Claire called me after you. I want her to say right now publicly that when she called me, she didn't ask me whether or not I was going to take the raise. Did you?
No.
You didn't.
She didn't ask me.
And had you asked me, you would have found out what you found out the next day, and what everyone else found out, is not only am I not taking it, I'm taking a $6,000 pay cut. Joey Durrell and I have taken historically what our employees take. If our employees get nothing, I take nothing. If the employees get 2% or 3%, I take the 2% or 3%. So regardless of what's in the budget, what is going to be taken by me when elected city parish president is the mayor's salary plus the 2% that the employees take. That is a $6,100 pay cut to me. It is not about the salary. It is about service. Everyone in this room who knows me knows that it is not about salary, it is about service.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it. We thank the panelists for being here this evening. Before we go, we'll allow you 2 minutes for closing comments. As we mentioned earlier, Dee won the toss, elected to defer in the opening statement, so he'll have the option to begin here with the closing statement. 2 minutes.
Well, again, I've enjoyed the past 12 years as your city parish chief administrative officer. I bring experience, I bring professionalism, and I bring public service to this job. I'm proud that I've been part of a team. I don't take credit for everything that we've done, and certainly none of us should take the blame for everything that we don't get right. But as a team, when you sit back and look at where our community is today, where we are fiscally, the potential that we have for being able to become an even greater community, I am proud to call Joey Durrell an amazing leader. And you should know about your city parish president. When he shows up for work the next day, it's like his first day on the job, even though he's in the final moments. That's the type of passion that it takes to move this kind of community forward and to face the challenges that we face together. I embrace our employees who come to work every day, dedicated civil servants doing what you're trying to do out there. I am an employee as well, trying to make ends meet, trying to support your families, trying to earn a responsible and an easy wage if you can, and to live in the greatest community that we have in the nation, in the world. We don't make the best of lists by accident. We make the best of lists because you've elected the kind of leadership and you've trusted us to assemble the kind of team that gets us on those best of lists. Lists that the state and other states could only dream of. How many times have we said, thank goodness for Mississippi, so we don't have to be ranked 50th? Lafayette is a trend setter. Lafayette is the kind of community, and Lafayette Parish is building the kind of community that young people are flocking to, not running away from. I am proud to hit the ground running every day, no learning curve. Vote for number 72, D. Stanley, on October 24th.
Thank you, Dee. Joel, you'll have 2 minutes and change.
Thank you. I'd like to make sure of one thing, that if you take away anything from tonight, it's to understand that we're only as good as Lafayette Parish is. We can't be one Acadiana if we're not even one Lafayette. And so in order to be one Lafayette, again, I can't harp on the relationship side enough. But the other thing is, as it relates to the relationship with local government and state government, I rattled off a list of all the projects that it took state money to get done, and we were able to do that. But College Saloon is not a state road, but I was able to get $5.4 million in to try to get that project off the ground, even though it's a local project. The Johnson Street pilot program, where we're going to bury the lines, that's $25 million of state money that's going to do that pilot program to get it to a point where people will be able to see it and decide if they want to do it for the rest of Johnson Street or not. So the relationship with the state leaders is as important a relationship as any of those other relationships that we've talked about, because ultimately the state and the city and the parish all have to work together. When Bell Helicopter wanted to locate here, guess who paid the $23 million to build the building for them? The state of Louisiana. Guess who provided the legislation to allow them to build an assembly plant here that was going to be built? They came to the legislature and said, will you pass a tax incentive to allow us to do that in Lafayette? And we did it. All of those, Proficient and CGI, they've all taken the state money, the state incentives, as part of the package to locate here. And so it is, without question, beyond important for the city, the parish, and the state to all work together.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Joel. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you being here with us this evening. We want to thank our panel again, Stephen Albrecht with KATC, Claire Taylor with the Daily Advertiser, Laney Lee Cook with the Advocate, and Walter Pierce with the Independent, and of course our timekeeper, Ms. Marie Santani, who did a wonderful job this evening keeping everyone in check. We want to thank everyone who came out this evening to SLCC for tonight's event. And for those of you watching on the Acadiana Open channel, stay tuned. More great programming on the way after this. Before we go, though, this should go without saying, but unfortunately in Louisiana, voter apathy has risen to levels that were unimaginable even in the last 5 to 10 years. Folks, voting is one of our most important civic duties, if not our most important civic duty. On October 24th, make sure you go to the polls and make sure you vote. And make sure you register to vote before the deadline this coming Wednesday. By the time this airs, that deadline may have passed. But make sure you register to vote and make sure that you know the issues before you go into the ballot box on October 24th. For more information on what exactly will be on your ballot, as well as where your polling place is, you can go to govote.com. That is GEAUX vote.com or sos.la.gov, which is the Secretary of State's website. But again, folks, make sure you make that effort to learn the issues, learn about the candidates, and go vote on October the 24th. Thank you again, and until next month, thank you for visiting the Acadiana Press Club.